Hi, my name is Joe Masabni, and welcome to my presentation on seed saving and storage. Why you want to save your own seed? Well, to preserve a variety that you like, that your parents, your grandparents have grown for years. Also to preserve biodiversity. Peas in the Middle East is a little bit different shape and size and flavor and nutritional content than peas from Europe or this and that. So if we can, each place stores and saves those seeds, we need to maintain that biodiversity. Of course, when you save your own seed, you can manage your own food supply. You save and you choose for the characteristics that you like or that you want, whether it's a taller tomato plant or a dwarf tomato plant, things like that. And to develop and uh, preserve strains that are adapted to your growing condition by pollination and by breeding for these new varieties. And of course, because it's fun and it's a great addition to your gardening enthusiasm. Okay, so before we start talking about saving your own seeds, or if, especially if you are interested in making your own varieties, well, let's talk a little bit about F1 hybrid. And I'm sure you've seen that term next to many variety names in a seed catalog. F1 hybrid, F is filial, meaning like son, but anyway, F1 hybrid meaning is the first generation of a cross between two different parents. Okay, usually those parents are inbred lines, so they're very consistent among each other in terms of characteristics and yield and shape and color and size. So the two parents are inbred, and then you cross them. The crossing, the cross, the F1 hybrid, also called the offspring, is a uniform seed variety with characteristics from both parents. And sometimes the F1 hybrid is outperforms both parents in yield. Most usually people talk about yields. Uh, of course, they are a mixture of these two inbred lines, but among each other, they are very uniform. But if you save seeds from that F1 hybrid and then you grow it again, and it, of course, it's crossing and then it's making new seed, that is called F2 hybrid. Then don't expect that the F2 or the seed that you saved from the F1 hybrid, don't expect it that it will have the distinct features that you like, or it's very similar to the variety that you saw in the F1. For example, let's say you cross a red tomato with a yellow tomato, and then you get this orange tomato. If you grow the seeds from that orange F1 hybrid, then the uh, product from that you may get red, you may get orange, you may get different shades of red, you may get different gradation of yellow, all kind of combinations. Okay, so the hybrid varieties are not good choices for seed saving. So, okay, and here is this genetic rule. Try to explain it with some letters and numbers. So let's say parent A is pure for that gene. That's A. We call AA as, and then parent B is has a same gene but different, little bit different characteristics. So we call it B and B. When you cross them, AA and BB, one from the father, one from the mother, all of them are AB. 100% are AB, and that's what we call F1. That's why what I just said is that the F1 is uniform. But let's see what happens if you cross AB with itself to get the F2 generation. Then genetics tells you you have AA 25%, or like the parent, one parent, 25% like the other parent, and 50% AB. But remember, this is only one gene. the other gene could be, so one gene on that plant could be AB, the other gene could be BB, the third gene could be AA. So that's why overall the F2 is not uniform, and you cannot rely that you can save it for its desired characteristics. Now that we talked a little bit about F1 hybrid, let's continue with the discussion and talk about what are open pollinated varieties. This is another term that you see in the catalogs. Those are natural varieties or sometimes human selected varieties for specific traits, and then you reselect every generation. Okay. Because they are isolated, let's say the mountains of Peru, those potatoes are unique because they've been isolated for thousands of years, people growing them over and over again. They maintained certain specific traits, even if that flower is open pollinated. Uh, it does not have to be self-pollinated to be pure or have unique characteristic or consistent characteristics. Okay, so even though they're open varieties, the genetic traits are still relatively fixed with a little bit of variation. Maybe one plant a little taller, the other plant a little shorter, but overall you cannot tell one plant from the other, from that specific open pollen. Cross-pollinating varieties, those are, in other words, are mandatory. If without pollination, they will not set fruit. Some plants, the male and female flowers are separate. Okay, like here in the squash, you see the male flower. You see how the stem here is very thin, whereas the female flower, you can see the tiny squash there waiting to grow. That's a female, and this is a male. The bee has to transfer the pollen from here to here for that fruit to set. And some varieties like okra, the flower is complete, meaning both male and female are uh, on the same flower, but they still require pollination, sometimes because the male flower is too far separated and or too heavy or too sticky. The wind is not going to move it, so bee will help the pollination. And this is a partial list of vegetables that are will naturally cross-pollinate if you let them go into flower. I mean, we harvest the broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage before they open, but you should leave a broccoli after you harvest the main stem. Let it make side branches and let those go into flower. It's a great food for the bees in the winter when there's very few flowers around. In the fall or late fall, early winter. But then you'll see that these are naturally cross-pollinate. So you don't want to have broccoli and next to cauliflower, they cross-pollinate with each other. Okay. Self-pollinating flower are complete flower, meaning both male and female parts are on the same flower, and they don't need bee pollination or wind to pollinate themselves. Okay, uh, whether it's peas or whether it's tomatoes, sometimes just shaking of the plant will drop the pollen and fertilize the flower. Okay, those are self-pollinating. Of course, tomato will benefit. I mean, peas is maybe 100% self-pollinating, but I've seen bees going in there. I don't know if they're helping. Some people say that tomatoes are 95% self-pollinating because if you add bees, that you get that extra 5% yield. I've never done the research myself to confirm that point. And the vegetables that are naturally self-pollinating, I just mentioned peas and tomato, but beans, lettuce, pepper are other examples. So how do you maintain genetic integrity or purity? you keep these points in mind. The self-pollinated plants are easier to maintain for the novice seed saver. Let's say you select peas. If you do nothing, even if you have three pea varieties next to each other, you can be assured that this pea, variety A, will be different than variety B from variety C year after year, even if they're next to each other. So that's why it's easier to start with, to save your own seed if you're a novice. Cross-pollinated variety have to be protected from foreign pollen. Okay, and I'll give you some example. So you have to isolate the varieties. If you have two corn varieties, two sweet corn varieties in your garden, you have to isolate them somehow, whether by distance or something physical barrier or something. And of course, hand pollination may be required if you want to preserve uh, purity. Let's say, for example, the sweet corn. You manually cross-pollinate and then cover the ear with the bag so it doesn't get pollinated with the other variety you have in your garden. So, and like I said, here are the examples on how you can save and keep your seed isolated. You can put the whole plant under a insect netting or like individual plants under insect netting or individual flower inside a bag once it is pollinated naturally or you artificially pollinated it and then you enclose it so that it doesn't get any additional pollination that you don't desire. Okay, and hand pollination, I've done that a lot with squash, different types of squash. You take the male flower, you remove the petals, and then you brush it on the female flowers when it's open. And here's pollen collected from male sweet corn, and then you drop the pollen on the female ear, on the tassel as soon as you see it open, like at that stage. And then after that, you cover it with a paper bag so that it does not get additional pollination. So now let's switch to talk about methods for preparing seeds or before you save them. Many varieties, you just allow the fruit to naturally dry on the plant. For example, a cucumber, you let that cucumber get extremely mature and they turn huge and they turn yellow. And when you harvest it, that seed is mature. Watermelon, you're familiar with mature watermelon, the seeds are black. If you cut it when it's immature, the seeds are white. So you know that you have to wait for the fruit to be mature, then you can harvest that seed. You remove the seed, allow them to dry. For some varieties, like for example tomato, fermentation is the approach to separate the seed from the jelly that's surrounding the tomato. And let me show you what I did here. You take a tomato when it's completely red. The longer you save it on the vine, the better. You remove the pulp and the seed, so what you really have is a mesh of seeds that are stuck together because they have the jelly around them. So you see how they clump together. But if you add water and then cover it and you leave it on your counter for a week, they ferment. Just natural fermentation, and that natural fermentation eats out the jelly from the seed, and then you see then this. I hope it's clear if you look closely, but these seeds don't have any jelly around them. You pour that out, you rinse it multiple times, and hopefully you can see here that the seeds don't have any jelly. You dry them and you put them in a Ziploc bag once they dry, and you store them in the fridge for years to come. Squash, cucumber, and melon, those once you have done the isolation to make sure that you have one variety, and you pollinate you by hand to improve the chance of success, and then you wait for the fruit to get mature and ripe, and you collect the seeds, and you're all set. Okay, that's very easy. If you have multiple varieties next to each other, squash or multiple varieties of cucumber, then you have to do a physical barrier like that insect netting or individual flower um, so to isolate it. Okay. Now I get that question all the time. Look at my cucumber; it crossed with the squash. That doesn't happen. Melon and squash does not cross-pollinate. I don't know what happened, why that individual fruit looks round instead of the shape of a cucumber and it tastes like a cucumber. I don't know what happened, but they don't cross unless the laws of genetic went on vacation in your garden. Okay, so okra is very easy to save the seed because if you leave that seed pod to dry, it will eventually open up. It will dehisce or crack open on these lines, and the seeds, when they are black, you know that they are mature. Of course, being open pollinated, you have to protect those flowers. The okra can be a big plant, so you don't have to cover the whole plant. You can pollinate and cover that individual flower to save the seeds from that pot. Even though the flower next to it got cross-pollinated, one flower does not affect the genetics of the other flower. As long as that one flower is covered up and you protected it and you crossed it, then you know it will be pure. Beans and peas are self-pollinating, to collect seeds, that's very easy. Just let nature do its work, let the pods go to maturity, and then when they're dry, remove and save the seeds. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, all of that family. Um, I mean, this is a immature flower. Every one of these dots is a flower that will open. This is what we eat. So if you want to pollinate and save seeds, you have to leave it and let it open up and then pollinate. Or make sure you isolate them if you have broccoli and next to cabbage, or even two broccoli varieties next to each other. Okay, we say at least 1/2 mile, or put them inside a cage or insect netting if you really want to. You have multiple variety and want to reduce the risk of cross-pollination. Where do you store the seeds? Well, let me show you where I store my seeds.
The best place to store your seeds is in the fridge. My fridge has this little shallow shelf, and it's like it's become dedicated to seeds. These are peppers from Turkey that I collected, the Turkish variety. I collected the seeds. These are basically seeds that I've saved myself. And this bag of dry mint from my 20-year-old plant is probably a year old. The seeds can last here in such a situation for years. And in this video I'm showing you where I store my seed at work. Some of the seeds are at least 10 years old. Look at this, from 2010, and I did a germination test, and I'll show you the results. So don't give up just because the internet says pepper lasts 5-6 years. Sometimes they can survive 10-12 years with proper storage. Cool, dry place, and nothing like a fridge to have cool, dry, and not only dry but consistent temperature, not fluctuating up and down.
So this is the best location to save seeds, is in the refrigerator. If you have something dedicated for seeds, it's even better. This way you don't open the fridge all day long. It's a consistent temperature. And I mentioned that some of the pepper were from 2010. Uh, you read online, they tell you anywhere from 2 to 5 years, sometimes 6. Well, I did a germination test using this approach, what I call a water bath, to speed up the germination.
So in preparation for the planting for this coming season, I have old seeds, 2008, 2010 of pepper. I have 12 varieties here that I want to test. I have 2 that I know will be okay. I don't have to test. They're from last year. And I have 6 more that I ordered. So I want to test these 12 to see if they are still alive before I start seeding them. So I always like to do this pre-germination test in water. So I'll show you a video later when it's running, but here are the parts. You need a container, you need this little stick, because on this stick is where I'll be hanging these individual tea kettle strainers that I'm using to put seeds. So each one of these will have its own set of seeds so they can get mixed. Air pump and air stone. So if you are trying to pre-germinate only one variety, you don't need this. You can just add water, a beaker like that, or a bucket, or a pot, anything that will hold water, and you put an air stone in it that you can get from any aquarium. Doesn't have to be this big. A small one would be fine. You drop the seed in them, and as long as the water is bubbling, air is bubbling in that water, the seeds will not die. And in 2 or 3 days, some in 2 or 3 days, some 4 or 5 days, and you'll see if the root radicle started to come up. You see the seeds starting to send the shoot out, what we call the root radical. It's a quick way to test for pre-germination. And here's the final product. 10 different varieties I'm testing, not 12. I counted wrong earlier. And of course, number them or write the name, whatever, so that you know which is which. You never know. Things may move and fall apart. Don't assume that's what's on the right or on the left will stay there. So number them, and you know that one goes for this variety, two for this variety. Do I need 2 stones like this? No, I don't. This is overkill, but I had to because this little pump that I had 2 outlets, so I had to connect 2 of them. But anyway, simple things that you can have at home. Of course, these I bought on Amazon. This from any Amazon or any pet store, aquarium store, and that's a great way. Today is Monday the 24th, and we'll check them, and I'll show you in 3-4 days how they will look.
So actually, peppers probably will take about 7 days to get you real results. I don't know if it was the old seeds or what, but this is how they look. Some varieties, were faster than other varieties. And this is the ideal stage where you want to remove them when the root radical is barely starting to show. Like this one is alive and doing fine, but this is too long, and it's you risk the chance of breaking that radical, that root, when you put it in the potting mix in the pot. Okay, so this will be the ideal size here to remove from germination. These, I'm with my experience, I know that most of the seeds are alive because the point here is white, which I know is going to come out. It just may take a day or two. But if it's still flat, that's a dead seed and not going to make it. So out of those, varieties, 10 varieties that I tested, so that was from 2010, so 13, 14 years ago. And I put 18 seeds, and you see some of them, 1 or 0 germinated, none, and some 18 or 13 germinated, like 100% germination. So some 7, which is like 38% germination. So don't assume that if you read that pepper is 2 to 5, 6 years, all of them will behave the same way. Some lasted 14 years, like El Jefe jalapeno, El Rey jalapeno, New Mexico Mirasol. That's ornamental, but also edible. Okay, so do your own germination test on old seeds before you start seeding. My final thoughts are, as the price of seeds go up, as the um, seed diversity or crop diversity is threatened with climate change, I think it's very advisable for all of us to save seeds. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope it was a fun and educational experience. Bye bye.